There is a question that I'm afraid of. A question that I don't know how to answer. A question that all of you may have an answer for, but for me it's complicated. Where are you from? Now, I have a whole list in my mind of different possible answers. It depends who's asking. It depends when, and it depends where. Before I begin, I want to ask you two things. First, never ask me where I am from. And second, put aside any images that come to your mind when I say Israel or Palestine and listen to my story. I was born in a small city in Israel called Ramle, about 20 minutes from Tel Aviv. As a young girl, I didn't feel that I belonged to my own community. I was born as a woman to an Arab-Palestinian family in a small Christian community in a small city in Israel. A minority of a minority of a minority. A mega minority. There are a lot of expectations when you are a mega minority. I had a list of rules that I had to follow. It's simple. We graduate from high school, we go to university. We graduate from university, and then we get married. Well, what can I tell you? I had different plans for my future. As a young woman, I didn't feel that I belonged to my own country. I knew that I was different. It's not hard to tell in Israel. When I spoke in Arabic in the streets, people used to look at me like I did something wrong. But I was lucky. Since I grew up in a mixed city, I was able to adapt the Israeli accent, so no one could tell that I'm Arab. When I applied for my first job, I was so nervous. I really wanted to get this job. So before I sent out my CV, I started to delete any information that could mark me as Arab. I was afraid. For example, in the language section, instead of writing Arabic native, I wrote Arabic fluent and hoped for the best. Guess what? I was invited to attend an interview. My plan succeeded. But there was just one detail that I couldn't really change. My name. Bissan. Bissan? What does it mean? They asked me in the interview. Bissan is a Palestinian village which existed before 1948 and which today is called Bet She'an. Now, I love my parents, but since politics is not something we can hide from in Israel, they could have left politics aside when they named me. But they didn't. And that means that I can't run away from it. I'm a coexistent activist. My city, Ramle, is defined as a coexistent city where Arabs and Jews live together in peace. As a coexistent activist, I grew up wondering, what does coexistence even mean? Coexistence, by definition, is to exist together at the same time or in the same place. So I looked around and I found that this is actually reality in my city. People exist together and at the same time and in the same place. Like everywhere else. There were just one detail that no one mentioned when talking about coexisting in Ramle. We do exist at the same time and place, this is right, but without much interaction, at least not a positive one. As an active young adult, I was looking for some volunteering program in my city when I graduated from high school. I've heard about a center that gives such opportunities, and I went to check this center. I remember the first time I went there. I was looking for one of the coordinators when I suddenly saw a couple of women working, laughing. They seemed happy. What was special about this group is that it was a multicultural group. Ethiopian, Bukharian, Argentinian, and Arab women working together. It's not a sight you see every day in Israel, believe me. Something changed in me. I didn't see Arab and Jewish women working together. I saw a multicultural group of women working together. When you grew up in Israel, you start to divide the society into two groups. You're either Arab or Jewish. It's simple. I've never realized all this complexity in my society. Not until then. I actually realized that I now can have the cheapest trip around the world only in one day. Something challenged me in this center. I spent 3 years there. I joined the Young Leadership Group, a multicultural leadership group. A group of young adults who, like me, were looking for the place they can feel belong to in the middle of the conflict. We wanted to create a different reality. So the first step was to learn about all these cultures in the society. We started to organize different multicultural carnivals and to learn about different traditions and cultures. To be honest, I didn't understand where were all these groups all these years. I've never realized this diversity in my society. But I did realize that I now have even a bigger problem. Can you imagine how hard it is to prove to all these cultures that the Arab food is the best food in the world? It was much easier when only 2 groups were involved. Then is the dialogue. The second step was the dialogue. It's beautiful to learn about different cultures and to celebrate diversity. But there is a conflict in the room. We can't ignore it. We can't run away from it, especially if we want to create a different reality. It all started when we took part in a national project called Zikaron Basalon, Remembrance in the Salon. On the Holocaust Memorial Day, we invited a Holocaust survivor to share with us a personal story, a narrative, and we listened. A group of young adults who don't necessarily have a direct relation to the Holocaust participated in this event. I would never forget the discussions that followed the story. We sat there, a group of around, let's say, 20 young adults, and we shared our thoughts, feelings, and stories of our own families. Can you imagine that? In a small city in Israel, a group of young adults, Arab Christians, Arab Muslims, Jewish Ethiopians, Bukharians, Argentinian, Moroccan, Europeans, and more, are sitting together and talking about the Holocaust in the middle of the conflict. I was listening to the people when I suddenly realized we are all a second and a third generation of survivors. Those who survived the Holocaust, those who survived the Ethiopian immigration, those who survived the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe, and more. We all have a personal story of fear, a fear that is a part of us, a fear that is a part of our identity. How can we deny fear? How can we ignore fear? I realized how many stories this city contains. Untold stories, personal stories that no one even knew. Difficulties and struggles that no one even realized or imagined. We started to organize such events, each time with different narrative and a multicultural audience. The only role we had is to put aside any images and to listen to the story. One evening, we organized an event about the Palestinian narrative. It was the first time when the elderly people in town had the opportunity to share their story, their narrative, and probably the first time when young adults from different cultural backgrounds in the city had the opportunity to listen to it. I will tell you a secret. It was the first time when I heard stories that I've never heard before. This is how we started. Step by step, narrative after narrative. The more personal, the easier it is to convince people to come and listen. You now probably think that I'm going to tell you that we were able to create a different reality using the power of dialogue. Well, think again. You see, we live in the middle of a conflict. I'm talking with you about a daily reality of violence, hatred, discrimination, struggles, frustration, and above all, hopelessness. But we planted the seed. We started the creation of a different reality. Today, when I go to a restaurant with my friend in the city, people still look at us in a weird way. Imagine that. Arab, Ethiopian, Bukharian, and Argentinian are sitting together in a restaurant. It almost sounds like a beginning of a joke. But I never thought that I'm going to find myself in such a situation. Neither are my friends. Most important, today I'm proud of my story, of my identity, and so are my friends. We now know the stories, not only our story, but all of them. And when you know, you feel. Then you understand. And then you create a different reality. My grandfather has a restaurant in the city. He worked all his life in the restaurant. He made his place a safe place for sharing stories, memories, and enjoying good food, of course. The only rule anyone has to follow before going into the restaurant is to put aside any images that come to their mind when they see any person from any cultural background and to listen to their story. He taught me the meaning of a real dialogue, a dialogue without labels, a dialogue that enables us to feel the people, to listen to their story. I lost my grandfather 4 months ago. In his funeral, around 1,000 people from different cultural backgrounds and religions came to share with him his last moment, and with us, the hardest moment of our lives. I looked around in the middle of my sorrow when I suddenly realized the impact of the power of dialogue. I never imagined that a group of 15 young adults would be able to change the situation or the character of the city, or at least to plant a seed with such effect. It might take time until the day when I feel belong to the country I live in. But till then, I can finally say that I found the place I can feel belong to in my city. I learned how to listen, feel, understand, and then create a different reality. Now this is your turn. Ask, so you will know. Feel, so you will understand. And then change. Create a different reality. It's not going to be easy, especially if conflict is involved. It's going to take a lot of time. It even might seem impossible sometimes. But I want you to remember 2 things. First, that Margaret Mead reminds us to never doubt that a small group of committed young people can change the world. In fact, this is the only thing that ever has. And second, that the power of dialogue is so strong that it could change what many other people and alternatives couldn't. So don't ask me where I am from. Ask for my story. It's easy for you to put me in a box. It's easy for all of us. But if you want to make a real change, don't cut the stories, because then you will cut the dialogue. And the power of dialogue taught me to acknowledge the complexity in order to be able to make a real change. But if you still insist, so I'm from Ramle, the city of dialogue, and therefore, the city of the future. Thank you.